thank you guys so much for helping me with my project. So as a token of my appreciation, I hope you enjoy your lunch. The important things first, right? Okay. So for those of you who weren't involved in our project, what we've done is we've done some action research just to see how we can improve student learning. So we decided as a team during lunch one day, a few of us, that we would take a look at teaching decoding through morphology and breaking them down into roots and affixes, prefixes, suffixes. So that's the presentation that we have for today. So, to begin with, we all know we've got the No Child Left Behind, we've got the emphasis of Common Core, we've got the responsibility of secondary teachers as far as the literacy strands, including in the math. And sometimes we get a little baffled by the complexity of teaching reading in our content areas, specifically social studies and science, math, and so forth at the secondary level, because you're trained in your content, you're not trained in teaching reading itself. Next page, please. So, word identification strategies through word analysis and context clues are considered at the lower level academic skills that we expect them to learn while they're in elementary or even middle school before they get to us. But our school reading scores have remained consistent over the last 2 years, and we're concerned with improving those scores. So during a PLC meeting, what we did was we began to question the teaching of the prefixes, suffixes, and root words to increase vocabulary, decoding, and context of a passage. So we decided we would do a little experiment with that. So the purpose of the study was to determine if that knowledge could increase a secondary student's ability to decode unknown vocabulary and context of a passage. So our question itself was, does teaching morphology using specific research-based strategy at the secondary level increase students' decoding skills for unknown vocabulary in context? The literature review, I'm not going to read all of this, but one, it says that in order for students to apply decoding, that is one skill that they have to have, and that there's 4 different things that you can do in a specific instructional model for teaching decoding, which is paraphrasing, self-questioning, visual imagery, and word identification using the context clues. At the secondary level, next page please, I feel like we do a pretty good job of teaching visual imagery and self-questioning and the paraphrasing. But when it comes to the basic reading of decoding, because of the amount of content that we have to cover, we don't always have. Would you all agree with that? Yes. We don't have the time to do that. So how do we sneak that in? And that's kind of what this is telling us. So it gives us some of the strategies that we've used throughout the study to help us with that. The next one, it just talks about it's being standard practice, even at secondary level. It's starting to happen, and it's backed by years of research for spelling, decoding, and reading comprehension. So if you're teaching it, it will help in all 3 of those areas. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Then you have the different levels and the different types of learners that you have and how they help them. And we took a look at that in our study as well, because we have different classrooms at different levels doing different things. So we'll take a look at that. Your above average students and your average students actually add deeper meaning to the vocabulary. Students use the knowledge as a compensatory method for phonemic awareness, increasing their ability to decode and so forth. And even your English language learners create associations between their native language and their secondary language. Now, one strategy that was suggested was teaching the prefix plus the queen root plus the suffix to get the total. And we've kind of done that one in one of our strategies that we'll take a look at here in just a minute. And basically this just shows that you are segmenting this into those parts. Now, also, research indicates that the size and the depth of the student vocabulary contribute to reading proficiency. So the higher their vocabulary, obviously, we all know, the better readers that they are. So even if they have to guess what a word might mean, it actually increases their comprehension, which is a big thing for us. That's what we want. So, and it also stated that the languages that we get from Greek and Latin increase our English vocabulary knowledge. Even if we don't know how to pronounce the word, we can guess kind of what it means. The next one was this particular literature review discusses how to do it. It suggested that we start with a list of 10 roots or affixes, include the basic units, and conduct the vocabulary learning strategies and analysis, root webs, that sort of thing. That's what we did. And then here are the 3 major findings of that particular study. It contributes to a higher level of adult learning and reading, even for adults. Readers start to use syntax knowledge in context to determine meaning, and you have a high morphological awareness and increased comprehension. This is our participants in our study. We had 1 teacher, freshman English, 16 years experience with masters, 25 students, 8 female, 17 male, 10 gap. Our second one was a sophomore English, 7 years experience with masters, 29 students, 11 female, 18 male, 16 gap. And we have the upper English level, which is 40 students for 2 classes, 15 female, 25 male. Notice that our males outnumber our females in every situation. Then we had an intervention class, 13 years experience with masters, 14 students, 4 female, 10 male, 13 gap. And then we had a pre-AP sophomore, 3 years experience, bachelor's, 8 students, 4 female, 4 male, 2 gap. So overall, we had 5 teachers total that participated, about 116 students altogether. We did 52% of those were gap students, so it was about half and half. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see how those gaps are going to play out, don't you think? 20% of those are from single-parent homes. Okay? And then 70% are performing below grade level. Okay? So, next. Now, I have these too, but I don't know if you guys want those or not. A teacher survey was given, and this was just a verbal kind of survey that we talked about and discussed, what do you do with vocabulary, what you don't do with vocabulary. No one particularly said, well, we teach vocabulary, but we don't really break it down, kind of thing. Like we make it on a list, or how do you teach vocabulary? What are some ways that you teach vocabulary?
Repetition in the class.
Do you give them the words or the definitions, or how do
Give
you
them the words, they find the definitions, then we use them in multiple strategies in the classroom, and then quiz or a test.
Okay.
So,
How about anybody else? Anybody do anything different?
I have them collect words they don't know as they read. Like if we have, right now we have a lengthy reading assignment. And so as they read, they're supposed to write down words they don't know. At least one per, reading assignment. And then look it up and we show them in class. Okay.
Anybody else have anything different? Had any of you guys ever used the strategy of breaking it down like we did for the research before?
Nope.
Okay. All right, so next, please. Okay, student collection, this is what we did. We gave them a pretest, and it kind of looked like this, where we gave them the root word, and we just wanted to know, do you even know the meaning of it? And there's one on top, though, that's our favorite right now. There's a story behind that, we'll have to tell you later. What root affix meanings are, and to give us at least one example. So we gave the pre-assessment, and it was a total of 30 words. We decided on 10 words per week based on the research literature review, just to see what would happen, and we did it for 15 days. So we did 3 strategies, 3 days a week for 15 days. Procedures was, we had students participate in 3 specific vocabulary strategies: root web, word analysis, and foldables. So day 1, we would do the root web. Day 2, we would do the analysis. And then day 3, we would do the foldable to kind of give it a little more kinetic kind of situation there. So this is what our root web organizer would look like. In the middle, you'd put the root, and then the students and the teacher, they would all come up with different words that had that word in it and make those associations. The second one was the target word analysis. Did you guys find that the students had a little more difficulty with this?
Yes.
I did too. Yeah, I did too. Because with this one, they were like, I don't understand what I need to do because the word was in a sentence. on a lot of it. And then they didn't know how to break it down. This one here was the foldables, and I found like my students in the intervention class really like this one. What did you like?
I really liked it too.
Kind of reminded mine of the, where you have the front and the back, the word on one side, the definition on the other, and they related to that better.
So they had an association with it? Or, yeah. I think if we use the other one again, and we'll talk about this here in a minute, but I think if we use the second one again, we really need to maybe slow that one down a little bit and kind of teach them a little bit more in depth. I'll do a task analysis and figure out how to do it. That's just my suggestion from what my students in intervention were doing. They were like, I don't understand, and it really took them a while to kind of get the feel of it. Okay. So our post-test was a passage, and it just happened to turn out to be a passage about what we were doing and why we were doing it. But we gave them the word bolded, and then it was multiple choice, and they had to choose what this word meant based on the root and how it was used in the sentence. And it was 2 passages of 30 words in it. So then we gave them a post-test, and we compared the pre-test and the post-test to see what their growth was. And I did the growth by gender and by gap and by teacher. So we're ready to move on to that. So this is overall here. And what I found was, when I plugged in the numbers, is our final conclusion resulted in a 54.82% or 55% increase in being able to decode vocabulary and context based on knowing the root word. If you notice, they started out at 6.66, and then the post-test is 61.4, and then the overall growth together was 54.74. What do you all think about that?
It's an awesome job.
It is.
Significant anyway.
For 15 days?
Yes.
Can you imagine if we did it for a semester or 2 semesters?
Mhm.
Okay. Now here, I broke it in by classrooms. Our freshmen, because one of the literature reviews said something about age makes a difference, and the younger they are, the better they do. But look what the trend is for us. The older they are, the better they do. You see that? The freshmen had about a 50% gain. The intervention class was a 42% gain, which is pretty good for them because some of those guys are really lower level. And then upperclassmen was a 52%, sophomores was 60%, and then the pre-AP was 74%, basically. So, and we gotta think too, something I wanted you guys to think about and talk about here in just a minute is the size of those classes. For the AP class, there's only 8 students in it. Your sophomore class had how many students in it?
30.
30.
Down to 30.
So that may have made some of that difference there. It's the same age level, you know, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, go ahead. Thank you. And then just another way to look at it here. Okay, next page. Now, here's our results by gender. So I found this kind of surprising. Our boys always perform lower than our females do, but there's not that much of a difference here, like we see on our state assessments. You see what I'm saying? There's not a lot of difference here at all. What do you all think about that?
Isn't that interesting? Thinking about the girls in my class, I would have, that I used this assessment from, gave the assessment to, I would have expected the girls to far outperform the boys.
Like a huge,
Like a huge
yeah.
gap between them.
So what do you think about this, Ms. Haynes?
I can't account for that. I usually don't see that kind of so similar. So, something about this must have, I don't know, something about maybe the hands-on strategies, maybe that
You think that
makes
makes
a difference.
I think so.
Less the visual, but yeah. I usually never see scores that are that close between guys and girls.
I have heard more feedback from the males in my class. I got feedback about the assessment. The boys in the class did verbalize, they were afraid they didn't do well on it because they thought they would have done better if it did look like a pre-assessment. And they also told me, they're the ones who have remembered, they brought it up in class, the boys of it, they've remembered the definitions more.
Wow, that's surprising, considering females are more linguistic, I think. Yeah, for sure. So, do you think that maybe further discussion is how can we incorporate different types of strategies for different types of learning things? Maybe, I don't know. To me, this tells us a lot about the difference in how our guys learn versus our females. It looks to me like the females are going to learn regardless as much for the strategy, whatever strategy we give them, they're still going to be successful as far as growth. Maybe not as successful as in like 80%, but they're still growing. I mean, that's a huge jump. So, but if our guys, because we do have a gap, if they are doing the same thing and they're responding well to that for just vocabulary, it makes me think, what can we do for literature in general? You know what I'm saying? Okay, thank you. So here's our gap versus non-gap. I was surprised by this one too. Yeah, it's a little lower, which you expect, but it's considering our school, we continually discuss our gap and so forth, and we need to work on our gap. What do you think about this, Ms. Ferris?
I'm impressed that it's that close. And that they were able to comprehend and get that close of a score with the non-GAP students.
Considering that GAP encompasses a lot of things, I mean, I understand that they're the socioeconomic levels and the single-parent homes and things
Right.
like that. I have found in the class that I gave the assessment to, though, my GAP students consistently perform at or above my non-GAP students, which I was really surprised by. I have some kids who are considered GAP that are really high achievers that probably should be in the pre-AP class. So I think this is pretty consistent with what I've seen in my class.
Okay. So these are just some suggestions that I thought of, but I want you guys to add to our future actions. Where do we go from here? Of course, I'm presenting the findings to our BLC to discuss possible areas of continuing study, collaborative discussions of instructional improvements based upon the student needs, providing maybe 5 root words and affixes per week per grade level, figuring out how we're going to do that, seeking and learning even more research-based strategies that would address the gender and the gap needs students, multisensory strategies I think we should take a look at, and research-based instructional strategies to share with other classroom teachers for improvement either in vocabulary or even literature in general. But I want you guys I want your input. I want to know what you think about what's been presented here.
We can even do, use our pride time, just a few minutes at the beginning of each day. If we could have it short, and then the rest of the pride time, we take care of the other things that we have to do during pride. But have a little bit, so that way everybody's learning, 5 roots or even just one. I mean, I think you have all year with pride. So what kind of growth can we see for a whole school to increase their ability to read?
So how would we do that? Would we do like
Give your pretest.
so many per freshman, so many per sophomore?
I'd say everybody, the whole school,
Same.
we all do
The
this
same
week,
thing?
everybody has ortho this week, or however many. But yeah, with those kind of results,
How do you think that would impact their reading ability by growing their vocabulary?
I'd like to see the pre and the post test to see what, their growth is. And I think it's a good idea to incorporate it into your pride because you're going to reach every kid.
And if we could get teachers to buy in some of the core content or vocational classes to find a way to to use the words
to
in the
implement.
class, so they're seeing them in context.
And
That
we
is
have to.
content related,
Yes, ma'am.
so.
Could you not have the vocab and, or the vocab and the other teachers come up with words, root words that they come across a lot? Because you know there's got to be a lot in medical
In their
terminology.
own content.
And we-
Yeah,
Right.
and then share that. So even though if it's a kid not taking medical terminology, if they ever come across anything, they'll be like, oh, I kind of,
I actually
Remember
found
that.
the reverse of that in class. Mine told me, hey, we've done this before. We've done this in medical terminology. We've talked about rooms and looked at the
Good.
medical words.
And this would help for our COSA testing too, because our focus in COSA is vocabulary. And so that's one of the things that we have to work on with in the vocational area is, like for me, I've gotta have, my kids gotta have got 250 vocabulary words that they've got to feel confident, on their knowledge by the end of the semester. So,
Now, the challenge would be, of course, we have the other things to do during Pride that we have to address, but, figuring out a way that we can split the time.
Well, Thursdays are silent reading day. This goes hand in hand with literacy skills.
Right, and maybe if they
So
don't
5
have
minutes.
35 minutes, if they don't have the stamina to read for 35 minutes straight, do 15 minutes of this, and then,
We could do
but
it
then that
on,
limits it to one day.
and we could do it on the Wednesdays when we do test prep, and we could make an ACT question based, or find a word that would be ACT aligned. Is that a thing?
Well, I
that
think
would be a thing.
any.
Any word would be ACT. But I think it would marry, the two would marry well, because then you can make that connection. Here are words that you would see, now let's practice this.
So you all feel that this is something that we definitely need to continue?
It looks great.
I think it has merit. I think that the administration needs to be approached with these results.
I asked Mr. Davis to come today, but he said he had a meeting from 9 to 12. So,
The gap information alone, I think, would be of interest, or it should be of
Now,
interest.
it'll be a challenge to get all this together, find the passages that test exactly what we want to see if they can do. And also, I think, kids are gonna need some difference. I mean, like, over time, they'll get burned out doing the same thing, so.
right.
well, couldn't you have each department come up with a list and then submit them to you?
Yeah,
And
that's what
then
I was thinking.
take a little bit of the pressure off you, and then also we could incorporate different vocabularies from
Yes.
our areas.
You could get like the top, I know like in AP biology, they have the top 100 word terms that they have to know. If everybody had their top however many for whatever assessment or whatever thing it is that you're preparing them for, and then the kids could actually sort them out. You could do a card sort with all those words and sort them according to root word and sort them according to prefix. And I mean, they could work a lot with those words and this together, and I think that could be really useful.
Now, I've seen around the school, I don't know who's doing it, but they're posting the
Biology.
vocabulary words. You could do that, right? I have stopped, I've literally stopped and been like, what does this one say? And
Yeah,
like
I
gone
do.
around and read them, so, I've seen a couple kids doing it too, so, you could put those around the school.
So, Mr. Cooper, as a new teacher at our building, what do you think about our little research that we've done and the results and stuff? What are your thoughts?
Well, y'all say that, like you said, you didn't have a big difference in your gap regardless. I mean, I haven't seen those, results previously, so that's kind of shocking to me, just outside looking in. And then the male-female thing was surprising to me too, but this is the first time I've seen numbers like that, so that's new.
I guess the thing with the gap and even the male-female that surprised me is on our state assessments the results that we get back when we get our school report card, it shows that the females always outperform the males. And there's a huge gap with gap students versus non-gap. So to see this not being a gap here, that's what surprised me, because I'm used to seeing that huge gap between the gap students and the regular students and the regular students and the intervention students. I'm used to seeing those huge gaps. but even the intervention students, they almost did as well. And I think attendance might have hurt them a little bit.
Yeah, I think with mine, that was part of the problem too, especially with my seniors. They come and go so much. I don't have consistent attendance from really more than 5 or 6 of my seniors. That affected them, I'm sure, some more.
So-
Another issue if we were to do this, school-wide is, I think we would need to sit down and, get some training and make sure that teachers feel comfortable doing this kind of thing. Being able to talk about root words
And strategies.
and already be thinking about how they relate to their content and strategies to practice those. So I think just we don't need to just throw it out there and just say have at it,
But maybe come up with some different types of
split.
strategies to, say you could introduce
so that we have
this.
more than just 3, we have a bank of several of them that we could, interrelate when they're starting to get burned out.
Because I think you made a good point. I think it's some of the strategies that we use that helped get the interest of those boys, for example. So teachers, I think, would be the same way. They're gonna want a different tool in their tool belt to pull from.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed too, when I look through the intervention stuff, is our students are very visual. So, even on the certs, they do really well on the science section of the cert because it's charts and graphs. So what we've done basically with the strategies is we've made them into charts and graphs for these students. So that may have been part of the difference,
I know last year when we had, I can't remember what it was called, the video vocabulary that the kids did.
The vocabulary.
Yeah, my boys did really well on that, and it's because they were rapping, there was pictures, and they really liked it, and I learned vocabulary that I learned new vocabulary by watching those,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
the kids really liked them.
I will attest to that. I used to, when I was in another school, we had one of the books of vocabulary we had to go through. And I would always have a picture that go with the word, and we would stand up and recite them every day, and then they would come up with more pictures. So I do think a lot of the kids are just visual learners.
Even with my AP literature students, we had, at the beginning of the year, we would get assigned a word, and they had to look up the definition, they had to look up difficult synonyms, because those would be the ones that would be on the test. Examples from literature or journalism, and then a picture, and the picture was the thing, because they would get memes and things, but they would remember those pictures, and then they would remember sanguine penguin, which has nothing to do with a penguin, but they remember cheerful and optimistic, and,
Right.
and possibly ruddy-cheeked, because they had that image. And now they're gonna remember that dactyl is a waltz, and so the pterodactyl dancing the waltz is how they're gonna remember it. So just, things like this
Yes.
really do work.
And that's what they do at the vocational, the medical terms, they do that. There's pictures for all the medical terms that they break down.
Okay, so let's come up with a plan, and we're done. All right, you guys come up with a plan. What do you want to do? How do you want to do it?
I like the pride thing. I like approaching the pride.
What do you want me to do?
I think developing the materials more would be the first step.
You want to add that?
No, because my handwriting is terrible.
Oh, her handwriting is
If you want anybody to read it.
So what did you say? Okay.
Developing
writer.
more materials, that would be.
Materials and strategies, yeah.
Yeah, materials,
And
like the
multiple-
pre and post tests
And in multiple areas, like content, multiple content.
and finding more strategies.
What did you say?
In multiple contents.
Pulling the words from multiple content.
And by that you mean having the teachers in the content area
Like
give
finding,
you a
give us
list
what
of
you,
words that would
what
work.
roots, what prefixes, what words do you, yeah.
Getting everyone on board.
Presenting
they-
to
Buy-in.
faculty,
Yeah.
faculty training.
Getting on the bus.
They need
Yeah.
to see the data results
Oh,
that you
yeah.
showed us. And administration should probably.
Did you guys like doing this kind of research? Like, what kind of positives and negatives did you find
Training.
was doing this? We're
Yeah.
kind of out of time, I thought. I felt a little rushed.
Yeah,
Time
if
is
I-
an issue.
yeah. If I could have started this in August, I would really be excited about where they would be at right now.
I think too, for me, it would be a matter of, whenever I start something new, it takes me a while to be good at it.
Yes.
I was not good at teaching these strategies because I've never used them before and they were sort of puzzling to me at first. So I think after I practice, I think I'll have better results. And I think after I have practice, I can incorporate it a little more fluidly with everything else that we do.
Yeah.
So that it's not like this, I felt, for me in my classroom, I struggled with this is a standalone thing I'm doing here. And it didn't always jive with everything else I was doing.
Yeah.
And that's fine, it's not a problem, but I like for things to kind of morph together, so
Mhm.
I would be able to maybe do that more effectively if I had some practice.
Well, we did the soy bar all year because one, part of our content, and two, increasing their ability to, their comprehension and practice and all that. But yeah, if you do it all year, I think you'll be able to start seeing more of those, hey, this is just like what I just read in the book. So I think over time, it would start really meshing, you to see that connection. But along with PD, I was thinking, could be part of our other PLC groups. That could be something that we talk about and
I think we need
Share.
to get like an online folder where teachers can upload different strategies. You know, if something's working, hey, this works for me, and then we put it there so we can share.
hey, maybe go with those vocabulary
Mhm.
things again, and that might,
We had to buy that, though.
Yeah.
We
it's
did-
expensive.
We did, we may still have a login.
Really?
I do think one thing to get everybody on board is we would need to find research or make the connection of how it's going to help overall, like ACT scores and end of course scores. So it's not just, oh, we're helping you all do your job, but no, this helps in everything.
So tie it to
Right, it
testing.
does.
tie it to data,
Yeah.
tie it to testing.
I mean, and like
I hate
said-
saying that, but
Well, for us, for the vocational, we are pushed COSA, I mean,
Right.
that's our test, that's, it's how we prove our stuff, and vocabulary
And
is it.
CCR.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, the CCR thing is gonna be big next year, right? We're gonna require it for graduation.
Mhm.
I mean, I have 2 kids that are gonna have to jump through that hoop myself, and I'm a little nervous for them,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's good.
So we need to share this with Mr. Davis, right?
Yeah.
And then,
and Mr. Coffey.
and Mr. Cosby, and get some feedback. And then hopefully we can, share it with the faculty and maybe start something with that. And if not, I guess we can regroup and we can figure out where we would go from there. Like maybe you could do it in the English department or whatever. Is it feasible for us to go ahead and start looking for different types of materials and different strategies
Right.
and kind of make a toolbox?
Yes, I think we need a toolbox.
I don't think we'll be ready to hit the ground running in January, at the beginning of January, but,
No.
Have a focus group, start working on it.
yeah. Go
So is this our focus group?
online.
Could be, I think so.
I mean, I think if we give it January for us to kind of get things started back in school and us come together, maybe we can even start it in February. Just take so many words a week and focus on it.
We could do what do you think about, we go ahead and start looking for materials and strategies. We maybe ask some of the faculty to go ahead and start pulling some routes that they use automatically in our classrooms.
Maybe
So we have an
invite
idea.
some content area teachers that aren't usually up here. Invite them to lunch and say, hey, let me show you some stuff and tell me what you think.
Yeah.
Just to kind of get some input from different
Okay.
content areas. People who are not reluctant, they're willing to try something like this, so.
Right.
And maybe I kind of picture science and social studies being particularly interested, because they have their literacy standards they have to meet anyway.
Right.
And they have EOCs, and they have a lot of vocabulary, actually. So I could see, as far as like the core content people, maybe they might be a good place to start.
Well, I'm thinking maybe for the spring, we could experiment with some things and then really tone it down and have it ready to go by next year for sure. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
So we'll look for material, talk to some faculty members, and do
I
some
got all
more,
that, I think.
do some more stuff with that. Great. Anything else? So you guys did an awesome job with collecting data for me. I appreciate it.
You were very pretty, Vanna.
Oh, thank you.